to The Conversationalists. We are a global collaborative social audio host from Twitter, Clubhouse, Wisdom, and LinkedIn Audio. This cohort was created by Jason Zakowski, who is more commonly known as the dog dad from Bunsen and Beaker, the Science Podcast. Jason is a scientist, educator, podcaster, and had the vision for what a dynamic group of social audio hosts could do together by quadcasting a show on topics as varied as the host who host and produce each show. Just so you know, this is being quadcasted between Twitter, Wisdom, Clubhouse, and LinkedIn Audio. So if you're joining us live or listening on the replay, we thank you for joining us. My name is Jennifer Navarrete, and I am an early adopter of podcasting, social media, and Web3. I'm a laggard when it comes to fully embracing smart tech like AI, which was last week's topic. If you haven't heard it, we suggest that you go back and take a listen. Now, I think most folks are a combination of the two. They're perhaps an early adopter in some areas and a laggard in others. And so I would like to meet our hosts. I would like for you to meet our hosts and speakers for today's Early Adoption Opportunity show, the risks, the rewards, and the challenges. I'm going to say that I am joined by two fabulous co-hosts and producers, Gia El-Hassan and Rose Horowitz. Gia, take it away.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Hello, everyone. Juwaidia here, aka Gia, Sudanese-American, currently living in Malaysia. A global online marketing specialist, content and funnel strategist, and a serial entrepreneur. An early adopter by day, an innovator by night, and a lazy adopter when it comes to cooking. Next, followed by Rose, our other amazing co-host. Go ahead, Rose.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Proud to be here with such a great group. I am Rose Horowitz. I'm a Pulitzer-nominated journalist and the founder and host of Woman to Follow, which is a global hashtag to amplify women's voices on social media. Great to be here. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, so we are joined by Revolution McInnes, who is the director of today's show. He is what we call Command Central, pushing the buttons and pulling the levers for the conversationalists. Rev?
Well, hello, everybody. I am excited to be here. I am, I don't know these days, a jack of all trades. I do a ton of stuff, and I am an early adopter of the Mega Podcast. So this is awesome.
So a quadcast takes a team, and Rev is joined by hosts from LinkedIn, Clubhouse, and Wisdom. Indra Bartona is our LinkedIn host. Indra?
Hello, everyone. I'm Indra Bartona, a producer in the film and television industry and TV host, plus the founder of the Positivity Vibe Tribe. So I'd like to talk about a few things later when I have the opportunity, and sometimes we're also, I guess, trailblazers in other fields. Thank you.
Fantastic. So our Clubhouse host, because remember, we're a quadcast, our Clubhouse host is the fabulous Michael Sterling, who is known as Audio Mentor on almost all social platforms. Michael?
Hello. Thanks for having me here today. I've been doing audio and all things tech for 25 plus years now, and I've been a bit of an early adopter on some of those things, and so I'm looking forward to the conversation today. I will pass it over to Dr. M, or give it back to you, Jen.
Yeah, Dr. M, he is our Wisdom host, and I have to say that when I first met Dr. M, I was so surprised at how, maybe I shouldn't have been so surprised, but I was fascinated by how techie, geeky he was, and I thought, this is my kind of person. So Dr. M, take it away.
I appreciate that, Jennifer. Hi, everybody. This is Saman Mirkazemi. I go by Dr. M. I'm a physician, consultant, and a huge fan of social audio, and excited to be here in this talk, and grateful for the opportunity.
So we are also joined by a fabulous lineup of speakers. So in addition to the hosts and producers, the conversationalists, we've got a stellar lineup of folks who are here to lend their knowledge, expertise, and wisdom as it relates to the early adopter opportunity. Samantha Postman is one of those speakers. Did we lose Samantha?
Hi there. I'm Samantha Postman, a Canadian, and I am a serial entrepreneur and business consultant. I run spaces on thought leadership and multidisciplinary skills, which we all call a polymath for polymath. So I recently founded a mastermind community called the Medici Modern Polymaths. And when it comes to innovation or early adopters, I'm a 5 times founder, so I guess that makes me an innovator, but I'm also an early adopter in a lot of different new projects and new ventures of people in this room or maybe someone from out there. So thanks for having me on today.
Fantastic. And then we are also joined by Dr. Jasmine Berry, who, if you listened to last week's show, dropped some amazing nuggets of wisdom in reference to AI. I'm still processing what the last week's show was. I have to go back and re-listen because there was a lot to unpack. So Dr. Jasmine Berry.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jennifer, for hosting this space. This is a wonderful opportunity. Hello, everyone. I am Jasmine Berry. Feel free to call me Dr. Berry or Dr. Jasmine. I am a research scientist in the neuro AI space, where we focus on applications for building better robotics and also health applications for humans as well. So I'm very much interested in how we can adopt early technologies through research and ensure that they're foolproof so that we can deploy them in real world environments. So this is very much in line with my interests, and I hope to give more gems today, just like we did last week.
Next, we are joined by George Silverman, who is well known in the innovation and early adopter industry. And I have to say, I'm really thrilled, George, because you're somewhat of an expert when it comes to this topic.
Thank you. I'm an innovator in audio-only discussions. I think I did the first of what's now called social audio 53 years ago by telephone conference call. That developed into the telephone focus group. What's relevant here is that I knew Dr. Rogers, Ev Rogers, consulted with him in writing 2 books on word-of-mouth marketing. Word of mouth is mostly getting the early adopters to talk to the early majority and late majority. So that's what word of mouth is. And I've done hundreds of focus groups on early adoption. So this is one of my favorite subjects. I absolutely love it, and hope to be able to contribute something to it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We've got such a robust group here. I'm really excited to kind of dive in, but we're going to close out. We're not going to close out quite yet. We've got Mariah Howard, who was also one of our featured speakers last week. And again, still trying to process the amazing nuggets of wisdom that were dropped last week. So Mariah.
Hey, everyone. Jennifer, I'm so glad to be here. So honored to be a part of the Conversationalist. I have a bit of a biased perception and perspective on early adoption as a developer, as a marketer, and as what I would like to call an ethical engineer. So early adoption for me is more about the innovation, and so that we are building the tools and the resources that effectively and ethically support our progression as human beings on this earth. So I would advise and advocate and promote for ethical engineering so that everyone is building the most conducive toolings for everyone on this planet.
Fantastic. I also see our good friend Asya down in the audience. I'm hoping she'll come up and speak. But in the meantime, I would like to bring up our fearless leader, the man with the plan, the person who put us all together, the genius behind this all, Mr. Jason Zakowski. Welcome to the show.
Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
Hi, everybody. I'm glad to be here. Jen, I can't wait to see what's going to happen in this discussion. Early adoption in my day job as a teacher is something that I am definitely on the cutting edge of with gamification of learning. I know I dodged a bullet when I was younger by not adopting the early Nintendo Virtual Boy, which was a colossal failure, and the people definitely did not enjoy buying that system. But I'm definitely an early adopter of social audio. So I'm happy to be here, and thank you.
Fantastic. So we're going to dive into the show. So I'm going to say, and Asya, by the way, if you'd like to jump up at any time, please do. What is an early adopter? We must define this because we're talking about, are we an early adopter? Are we an innovator? Are we a laggard? Are we early majority? So I'll say that we're going to turn to a great definition by Investopedia that says the term early adopter refers to an individual or business who uses a new product, innovation, or technology before others. An early adopter is likely to pay more for the product than later adopters, but accepts this premium if using the product improves efficiency, reduces cost, increases market penetration, or raises the early adopter's social status. So the link for that are the opportunity for this is going, or the link actually for this definition is going to be put inside of the nest. It's going to be put in the chat, but we also have a moment that was created by Rose that is going to something that you can go back and you can reference, because we're hoping that this becomes a resource for you if you're an early adopter, if you're someone who's in the pain points of being an early adopter, because it's not all wine and roses. We hope that this will be a wonderful resource and encouragement to you. So the visual that goes along with this is what we'll see Rogers bell curve of the diffusion of innovation graphic. Now, when we talk, people talk about a wave, like watch out because there's a wave of social media. There's a wave of podcasting. There's a wave of social audio. There's a wave of Web3. Insert topic here. What that means is it refers to this Rogers bell graphic. And if we can reference the Rogers bell graphic, we'll see that innovators create things. Early adopters notice what innovators are doing and say, I think that applies to me, or I can see where the value of that is before it goes to the early majority. But if you can look at Rogers bell curve and see that between early adopters and early majority, it is a steep climb, my friends. And I can tell you as an early adopter, it is a slog. And a lot of times we don't know, or in my case, I didn't know if I was headed in the right direction because I had a lot of naysayers around me and a lot of people going, oh, wait a minute, what are you doing? And I don't think you're headed in the right direction. And what are you talking about? I had a lot of that kind of naysayer negativity around me when I was like, in 2005, when I heard about podcasting, I was like, this is a thing. Even though at the time everyone thought I was speaking Klingon, I was speaking some crazy language. I knew it was going to be a thing. Now we fast forward all these years later because I've been podcasting for 17 years and podcasting is a thing. In 2007, 2008, I was like, Twitter, in 2007, I was like, Twitter's going to be a thing. And in 2008 and all those years, I was like, social media is going to be a thing. And everyone told me that's not for business, that's for kids. But I was an early adopter of that. I could recognize that it was going to be a powerful piece of global communication. So when you're an early adopter, it is exciting. It's thrilling. It's wonderful. There's all the amazing moments that go with it, but it's also a lonely slog. And it's a lot of times where you're questioning yourself when the people around you are questioning you. So what I'll say is that I hope that this session today is a hug for early adopters. That if you're facing that uphill slog where no one around you believes you, understands why you're doing what you're doing, but in your gut, in your heart of hearts, you know this is the way, then we're here to encourage you and to give you some resources and insight and share our own nuggets of knowledge that we have gleaned along the way. And I will say that I would like to turn it over to Gia to answer her early adopter. And every speaker will get an opportunity to kind of talk about their early adopter highs and lows.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. That was a really, really good introduction. And a lot of us actually are innovators and are early adopters and late majority and early majority in so many different ways in life. Like, for example, just like Jennifer explained, up in the nest, we posted the Rogers bell curve. And also, before we start our session, we have a poll for you so that you can answer which one are you. And at the end, let us know if actually this is you, if you are an innovator or if you're an early majority or late majority. And we will review the results later at the end. So when it comes to being an innovator or an early adopter, I'm definitely mostly an early adopter. But sometimes I am an innovator as well in some parts of my life. Now, when it comes to being an innovator, my husband and I were actually in esports since 2009, 2010. And fast forward to 2011, when my husband started competing professionally worldwide, we were the only parents in the entire esports industry, the only ones. So we would like take the strollers to the stadium, and we were the only people there. And a lot of news channels will interview my husband, like, how are you actually doing this as a father, as a husband? How are you competing professionally with all these single people on stage? So it was hard when it comes to being the only person there as an innovator in that industry. It was really hard because there was no one to go back to. There was no one to look for guidance for as a parent. So that's one of the things that we struggled with. But rewards, we were like celebrities in the industry because we were the only ones that were the only parents there. So it was really, really fun to explain to younger kids. And now they're married. A lot of those kids that my husband coached are married and now they're having kids. So they always come back to us like, how did you guys do this? How did you survive this and traveling and all of that? So that was really fun. A thing that I have been an innovator in as well was I was the first one in my circle that I adopted the iPad as my laptop, my full laptop. And every time I tell people this, the iPad Pro when it first came out, so I decided to just turn it into a full functioning laptop. And everyone thought that this was just impossible. So what I did was I just bought it and I just demonstrated to everyone that you can use this as a laptop. Fast forward 3 years later, everyone will start talking about the iPad Pro as a laptop and how you can use it as a laptop. And it was advertised that it would be your laptop. So it was really fun to watch that people are also adopting this as well. So end of the day, it's when you're in both ends of the spectrum is that it's hard. It's hard being an innovator, and it's also hard being an early adopter, but it's also rewarding watching how everything folds and how everyone is now with you. It's like, oh yeah, you're right. You were doing this. Yeah, I know. I get why you like this, and etc. So this was just a little bit of story of how I'm an early adopter. And go ahead, Jennifer.
Can I jump in here and make a couple clarifications? I may have started this confusion myself here before. Ev Rogers very carefully distinguished between the innovator and the early adopter. There are two possible confusions that I find people make here, and it's really important to understand the differences. First of all, there are two kinds of innovators. The inventor of the product is an innovator. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about adoption categories. That is the absolute first to adopt it after it's been invented. Has to be invented before it can be adopted, obviously. So we're not talking about the inventor. We are talking about the innovator, which is an adoption type. They are the first people to try, and they're quite different. Ev Rogers made it very clear they are quite different from the early adopters. The innovator is the person who tries things because it is new. That is, their primary value is novelty, as Rogers called it, venturesomeness. He said the primary value is venturesomeness. They want to try new stuff because it's new. The early adopter wants to try something because they want to get something done. And the thing they want to do is so important, they will try something before it's fully developed. Okay, so that it doesn't matter if it doesn't have an owner's. So the innovator, if it's got an owner's manual, they don't even want to try it. It's got to be before the owner's manual has been written. It's got to be as the product is developing. They're not interested after that. And they are not respected. Innovators, now we're not talking about inventors here. Innovators are not respected. They're viewed as, oh, that's just Gia. She'll try anything. You know, that kind of stuff. I don't mean to pick on you, Gia.
That's true.
I know you and love you. You know,
I love you too, George. Go ahead.
So, something. Well, that's just crazy George, who will try anything, any new cooking gadget, sous vide cooking. Well, my friend said, that's just George going off on his thing. So they're not respected in the area because they're trying because it's new, not because it's better or good or even passable. The the early adopter, on the other hand, is very much respected. They are the opinion leaders. And I would have to get my clients to stop going after the innovators who are not listened to, and to go after the early adopters who are prudent, careful. They are careful to judge. They know the pros and cons. They look at the product realistically. They will warn you about all the pitfalls that you're going to fall into and how to cope with them. They are really genuinely helpful. Saman is that for a lot of us, Dr. M. And always finding new stuff, telling us what works about it, what doesn't work about it, what to watch out for, what to try, what to stay away from, all that stuff. That's the early adopter, not the innovator. So let's just get clear on that. And word of mouth, I wrote 2 books on word of mouth marketing, is almost completely about getting the early adopters to talk to the early majority and late majority. You don't market to the laggards. The laggards are hopeless. The laggards only adopt after they have to. So, but it's the early majority and the late majority, which is 64% of the marketplace. That's the one you want to adopt your product, and it's the early adopters that get them to adopt to it. Thanks.
Just to recap on what George said, it's actually very true. As an innovator in that thing, just like George explained it, you will get a lot of hate. My husband and I received a lot of hate being in esports, and no one believed in us, especially my parents. I come from a family where if you're successful, you're only a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer. That's it. So coming to my family saying it's like, oh, we're in esports, we found a lot of pushback until Olympics actually qualified being in esports as an athlete, and they saw the pay slips where you can get paid almost $100,000 a year because prize winnings are in millions. So then people start taking it seriously. But before that, we were never taken seriously. So that's a very good point, George. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, it's a social validation. Some of the later adopters need social validation, and it's from the early adopters that they get it.
Right. Right. So, Jason, I wanted you to jump in here on this because you're definitely on all spectrums in regards to this.
Yeah. Gia, I just want to apologize for my past self because my past younger self definitely poo-pooed the esports. And boy, did I have to eat my words in the last 2 or 3 years. Our school now has, my day job, I'm a chemistry teacher. Our school has a really good esports team, and they're nationally recognized in Canada in some games. So it's like legit. So Gia, I'm so sorry about that.
No, it's fine. We get it. I get it. We've been there, trust me.
Well, just quickly, my own story about innovation being an early adopter. There's this thing in education which has a lot of promise. It's called gamification, where you take a concept and you turn it into some kind of game where the students earn points. It's basically like role playing. If you've ever played a role playing game, or you play a game on your phone, and as you play it, you get better. You can unlock things. And I saw the early promise of this like a decade ago, and ran it in my classroom. And now I present about this at teachers' convention. Gamification is something that still many of my colleagues scratch their heads about. They're like, how do you implement this? This is bizarre. But the whole idea of it is it fosters teamwork. It fosters healthy competition without, the kids feeling on the outs is really important. Just quickly, and then I'll be quiet. The big gamification things that I run is I turn my class into Hogwarts. Seems kind of silly, but they're sorted into the different 4 schools of Hogwarts during an entire unit of chemistry, and they compete against each other for house points. And the entire learning process is separated into ways that the different houses can gain points. And the engagement is through the roof. I have kids that only take my chemistry class, and it's advanced chemistry, to do the gamification because they hear about how fun it is. I won't get into the specifics, but that is an early adoption where I feel many of my colleagues in education are lagging behind. It's hard to implement, but when it's done right, it's excellent. Thank you.
Mariah, I'd love for you to jump in on that, because as you're developing Web3, surely there's a whole lot of folks that are looking at you askew or askance because they're not quite sure what it is you're talking about.
Oh my goodness. Yes, this is an everyday challenge for me. But I really wanted to go back to the topic of gamification and us integrating that concept into our school systems and it being early adoptive, because we already use a token system for a lot of our kids and our kiddies, right? And if we can actually implement the technology built into the curriculum, now learning is almost more so us or our children actually being able to use our brain as the muscle and be rewarded in more ways than one. So I absolutely am all for gamification in schools and our development of our curriculums and the best ways that we can really ethically reward our students for being as brilliant as they are. All for it.
Fantastic. So I'd like to invite the other speakers to chime in on this, because I know Samantha shared this amazing farm video and about the innovation and early adoption of technology and drone technology and GPS technology and all kinds of things in relation to farming. And I'll admit, I hadn't actually thought about farming as being innovative, and or that there were an early adopter set of farmers who took this on initially. Because, anytime there's anything new, other people are like, I don't know about this. And so I really like the concepting of farming and innovation and being the early adopter farmers within the farming community. Did we lose Samantha?
Nope.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Yes, about the farming and innovation. So I did post yesterday. There we go. It's up in the nest there for anyone who wants to look at it. With farming, we are often considered to be late to the game because it's a long standing occupation that's been going on for centuries. And I think what happens is we see these photos of farmers with really old equipment, or sometimes we see something from a developing country with like a horse and plow, and we don't really realize what innovation is going into our food industry. Like from everything from selecting the proper seeds, like there's actually, like when we buy seed, it actually goes through a processor with sensors and picks optimal seeds. They go through germination tests. They go through like lighting and AI to pick the best seed. So from seed all the way to your plate, there is tech and AI involved in every single step of the way in almost everything you eat today. And most people don't realize that that's going on. There's innovation. In fact, most of the farmers who are not using innovative or even being early adopters aren't able to farm because the margins are so tight and sometimes in the negative. There's years that we actually lose money. So we have to be innovative. We need to be strategic. So one of the things I shared in this post the other day was we have a lot of tech that we use, but this particular one focused a little bit on GPS and auto steer. So what we're able to do is there's a lot of monitors in the cab actually when we're planting or when we're harvesting or anything that we're doing. But in this particular case, when we're planting, we want to make sure that there's preciseness in the planting. We want to make sure that we're not overseeding because then the plants won't grow well if they get choked out, as well as we want to make sure that we're minimizing fertilizers and any other type of inoculants or anything we might be using. So, and it also reduces fatigue. So we have like an auto steer that's connected to the steering wheel, which is connected to GPS. So all of our fields, my husband had to go around to every single field and GPS every single one perfectly. That's all fed into his system, and it fed into the auto steer system. And so he is able to go, he still has to do some manual moving of the steering wheel when they do corners and things like that. But that's a way for what we call, there's something called precision farming. That's one of them. So of course, we could have a whole conversation about all the tech and AI, but I just wanted to give you an example. Now on our farm, we're often early adopters. We're one of the first ones. Mostly that has paid off. Every once in a while it hasn't. We bought a drill some years ago, which was called a disc drill. So what we do is what's called no-till farming. So we want land as a non-renewable resource. So we have to be very careful about making sure we don't lose any topsoil, that we make sure that we're producing as much as we can while taking care of the land. And so we bought a disc drill, which was very innovative at the time. And so it kind of slices through, it barely slices the soil and then drops the seed in. But in our particular case, what was happening is what we call hairpinning. And so the seed wasn't going into the soil, and it was like laying on the top of the ground, and we weren't getting able to produce. So we actually lost money with that innovation. So that does actually happen from time to time. And so then we had to go back to the air drill, but then they had improved the air drills since then, what we call air drills. So there are positives and there are negatives, but that's what happens with early adopters. There's going to be some wins and there's going to be some lose, but that's just part of the game, and we know it. But the people who don't take risks and the people who don't do early adopters are the ones who are left behind. And it's sad to say, like, we don't want to lose farming in the way it was, but that's just the way everything is like that. So if you don't adopt, you don't learn early, you can actually be late to the game, and then you'll lose out on making a profit when everything gets standardized. And that might not seem like it makes sense, but like here, what happens is and I'll finish up really quickly here. What happens here, if you're not an early adopter and you're getting in on those crops that pay well or you do well, so let's say I'm growing a new specialty crop and I'm an early adopter of a new specialty crop, the price is usually quite high because there's not a lot out there. Well, then what happens is everyone sees that, then they see what equipment you're using, so they all jump in after you, but then the market price goes down and they actually don't make very much money. So then it doesn't pay to be a late adopter if you wait till the new adopters are already trying it. So again, there's trade-offs either way. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah, thanks, Samantha. And this is Michael. Excuse me. All of a sudden, I got a gunky throat. Yeah, I've been an early adopter in the tech space as well, but mostly in the visual and audio sort of tech space. And there definitely is. It's a learning experience as an early adopter because it is more expensive, and you're kind of learning along with the people who created the tech. And so, like, I was one of the early adopters for the iPod. I bought one of the first million iPods ever sold when it had a FireWire port. Some people may not remember that. I owned one of the, some people may remember, but before flat screen widescreen TVs, there were actually tube widescreen TVs, HD TVs. And I bought one of those. And the very first thing I watched on my own high definition television was the 2006 FIFA World Cup final. And it's this 80-pound tube television anyway. So, but, it does come at a cost because, there hasn't been mass production of these things and so on. And so in trying to get an idea of where the industry is going as an early adopter, and it really does give you that benefit, you also have to pay a lot more. So I'll just close my mic there and pass it along.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. I wanted to also provide an extension to what Samantha was saying. This is Dr. Berry here. And I've done some work, related to digital health startups, and also focusing on precision health and wellness, especially for professional athletes, and monitoring some of their physiological biomarkers. And, this is all aligned with AI. And I wanted to maybe just propose the idea, or maybe a thought here to the speakers, that, with the bell curve here, that maybe it's a possibility that it can change depending on industry. And I think with AI, that could potentially lead to maybe a flattening of the curve, because in AI technology, or in the AI space, there's a possibility that we can always be early, and that we necessarily can't be too late with the technology that we're adopting. Because innovation is happening at such a rapid pace, anyone who does pick up on the technology is somewhat of an early adopter. And I just wanted to kind of maybe throw that idea and thought out there, because we are, working alongside, something that resembles something close to like Moore's Law, for example, which is that your raw computing power doubles, roughly every 10 years. This, I guess, early adopting phase that we're experiencing, I think it could become more permanent as we see technology advance in the very near future, so that most of us aren't considered laggards, because things will just happen at such a pace so quickly that, it's going to be kind of new and novel to us. And one of the reasons that sparked that thought in my head was because, especially in academia, or, some of the concepts that we're teaching, college students, a lot of it can easily become out of date, the very next semester. what's written in textbooks. Often there are even some classes that don't even use textbooks anymore. They're just reading scientific papers that come out on a regular basis because that's where the innovation is. And I could see that also translate to, maybe when we actually start deploying products and devices in real world environments, the people using that or the users, in the end product users, they will be the early adopters for a very long time and maybe not even considered laggards because things would just be changing on a frequent basis. So that's just a thought. Would be open to hearing any feedback on that.
Dr. Jasmine, it's Mariah here, and I could not agree with you more, because if we look at blockchain technology and the way technology itself has evolved and really speak more to AI and then its integration of, we are entering a new state and realm in the digital age where this technology is constantly and ever evolving. So to really bring back to Samantha's point and her positioning with early adoption, it's almost as if you don't adopt or you don't adapt even, then you do get left behind or you die, right? So this is just an evolutionary stage or problem or challenge or whatever you have to call it. But this is another state of the evolutionary stage in our digital age.
Absolutely. And it just very quickly before the next speaker goes, I think it's an opportunity for us to see this curve maybe more for change it to something different, just because of the speed of how our technology is developing and how it is innovating. We're getting to a point now in history, especially with AI. Anyone can build AI if you have a computer for the most part. You can build software systems as long as you have a laptop, a phone, or something, some computational device. And when you have that many people innovating and creating a product and solution, there's bound to be maybe an infinite amount of change to that system and to that infrastructure.
Like a super brain.
Absolutely.
Hello, everyone. It's Indra Bartoni here. I want to shift the discussion to a different topic, which is the entertainment field. And being an early adopter in this field, I am so passionate about all things entertainment. And I didn't even realize that I was an early adopter until I just reflected on this topic. And actually, it was our very first feature film, that was shot in Australia. And there was the discussion with the director about, do we use, film, or, hey, there are these amazing digital cameras. Maybe we should look into this. So ultimately, it was my final decision to go with digital at that point, and it was the right decision. It gave us so much more flexibility, and it was an exciting journey to be on. And then, so that was kind of like the first example where there are a lot of people that were trying to measure the quality, between film. And I think, look, film is really beautiful, and it really is, but the versatility for digital in the entertainment area is just so much richer for us. So moving with technology and actually jumping in as an early adopter, I certainly encouraged many of my colleagues, the other producers in the team, and also inspired the director. So from there on, he used digital format, even with his other projects. And then another example of being an early adopter was when we shot our music show series here in Los Angeles. We decided to release it online. And so it was actually released online. And that was, a lot of people were, oh, well, nobody's going to be watching it. Nobody's going to go. But it just gave us so much more of an advantage because we were able to spread across all the many social media platforms with various links, with it's available. And even to this day, it's right there. So it is online and available. So that was a really, really exciting concept to also move towards as well, particularly when, it's questionable and not many people are doing it. So we didn't actually know anybody that was doing it at that time. but it was actually our director's idea. And so we thought, let's just try it, and then, of course, at that same time, many other people started to do it as well. And so now that is how we all receive a lot of our entertainment, which is on the online platform streaming. So, I was just thinking about that, how it is to benefit many of us in the entertainment field, as opposed to working with the older mediums, although they are beautiful and graceful and they have their place. Certainly, the digital age for us is very, very exciting, and excited to move towards the Web3 with many of our projects coming soon. Thank you.
This has made me really think about the psychological mindset of, sorry for the voice, folks, the early adopter. It's my bread and butter too. Boy, it's really crunchy. The early adopter and their emotional makeup, and then the privilege of being an early adopter, and in places around the world that don't even have internet or great incomes. How do we shift the world in a way that early adoption can be spread out further to people, is really the thought that I have here, which I am totally going to just stick in my head. But just absolutely, Indra, that innovative mind that you have, and that is different than the mind of the adopter. And I think, and George could speak to this at some point too, maybe even in the side dialogue, is that difference between the two, and yet how those mindsets can complement each other possibly as well. But this is just a really amazing dialogue that is getting my head going very deep.
It's one of my favorite subjects, the psychology of the early adopter versus the other ones. And one of the hallmarks of the early adopter is they are not perfectionists. If you're a perfectionist and an early adopter, you're going to be in a mental institution. It's just the worst possible thing you could possibly do. So you have to have an enormous tolerance for things not being quite there, not being quite right, for playing and for paying the tax. There's a thing called the early adopter tax, which is the price you pay in time, money, prestige, a lot of prices you pay for being the first. And why would you do such a thing? Because in that area, it's such a value to you that you have to have it sooner rather than later. It's worth more to you to have it sooner and not well worked out than later better worked out. So if you're a professional chef, you need to have a combi oven, it's called, $6,000 to $10,000 oven that does all these different things. You have to, if you're a chef, you have to have it in a commercial restaurant. At home, it's just barely coming into homes because you don't really need, the home cook doesn't need it, so they won't pay that tax.
Okay, I'm going to go on to our second question, which is talking about what was that aha moment, that eureka moment that told you that you were an early adopter? Because I assume in this bell curve that none of us probably listening in this room on Twitter Spaces, which is pretty new, are laggards. So I would say that for me, the biggest aha moment was when I was working out at the gym, came out of the gym, checked my phone, saw a tweet that was talking about the imbalance in gender in the reporting coming from Capitol Hill. So that most men retweeted and followed other men, 82%, and 82% also for the case for women. And I just, had one of those moments. I said to myself, we got to do something about this. This has to change. And I put out a tweet that said, let's get this party started. I'm going to name 3 women to follow and ask. And then I tagged people in different fields and asked them to name their 3 women to follow. I went to the library and boom, my Twitter feed was going crazy with people all over the world naming artists and business leaders and, you name it, they were getting named, and I was just trying to keep up with it. So the hashtag became a trend, and with 12 million views, 12 million impressions in the first 2 weeks. And I wasn't going to stop there. So what I did is I started writing Twitter threads and profiling different women in different fields. And those got, a lot of, they would get 20, 30,000 views. And when I would call then for someone to interview who was very prominent, they often knew what Women to Follow was, and they were very eager to talk to me. So that was a big aha moment, and launched this brand that I'm been working on, Women to Follow.
Women to Follow. Love that brand and all the conversations around it, Rose.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I have always been an early adopter. I would say, in technology. From standing in line to get that first iPhone, I would say, when you're aware in an industry, then when something new comes out and you experience it, that's your aha moment, because you're aware of what's out there in that industry. And in the new innovation, in your first experience, you're going to know how that experience compares to everything else out there, So it wouldn't be possible for me, or it would be much more difficult for me to be an early adopter, say, in the entertainment industry, because I'm just not as aware as I am in the tech space. These days, early adopters are people who are into crypto, NFTs, metaverse, augmented reality, virtual reality. In AI, we can see in the same way that, web development went from writing code to now Wix and Squarespace. There is no code or low code modular options of building AI applications. And so I'll just briefly talk about, that aha moment, that first time that I hopped on social audio, because I was aware of what's out there in terms of social media. And that first experience was that aha moment of realizing, oh my God, this is it. This is the next best thing in social media. And I think it's a powerful thing when you realize that, because you see where things are going. You can have that vision because you're aware of that particular industry. And of course, you can partake of the tremendous advantage it is to get in early on something. In social audio right now, I would say we are equivalent of the first year of YouTube for YouTubers.
Wow. Well, I have to say that the story time or the eureka moment for me, this is Jennifer Navarrete, has to do with that podcasting. I'm telling you, for me, when I heard in the summer of 2005 that I could record something, put it up on the web, and that no one could stop me, I was like, sign me up. I mean, I could just see how this is going to transform the way that we could communicate and share our messaging with one another. Because at the time, if we go back to 2005, if you wanted to be in wanted to be heard, you needed to be on the radio. And by the same token, if you wanted to be read, you needed to be in the newspaper or a magazine. But yet now with, quote, new media, we could have a blog. Or if you wanted to be seen, you need to be on television or movies. But now we could do online video. And so that whole concepting of leveling the playing field just shifted my entire world. At the time, in 2005, I did not know that my entire career path would shift, because what I do now for a living all stems from that eureka moment when I totally shifted everything in the summer of 2005.
And those moments, Gia here, everyone, and those moments, Jennifer, are the moments that defines that moment where we realize what we are and where we're standing and how far we can push our limits. And that gut feeling that you have inside you trust that gut feeling where it tells you to push forward, just jump. I know everyone has that voice inside them and just jump, just go ahead. But these are all amazing moments, and that we're all sharing them and reminiscing them. But one of the things that I want everyone to think about, according to Rogers, according to the adoption, the technology adoption life cycle, is that the cycle, I'm sorry, not life cycle, is that these are personality traits that identifies the innovator, the early adopter, the early majority, and the late majority. There are specific personality traits that are attached to each one of those that drives us to be one of those categories. But I would like to ask you, can those personality traits be changed? Because just like everyone mentioned, technology is updating every single day. TikTok came and it forced every single person to become an adopter. Whether you like it or not, you were just forced to do it. And then all the social medias kind of forced us to just follow the wave or the trends. Can an innovator become an early majority and vice versa? Did you go through this phase in your life where you are an innovator and you realize, you know what? I don't feel like being an innovator today or jumping into anything. Let me just watch. Go ahead, George. You were saying something.
Oh, thanks. Yes, you can change it. It depends on the area. Everybody is all of the adopter categories in different areas. And so it depends on how strongly you need the product, how much turned on you are, but also within a category you can change. You can realize, well, I can play. I don't have to be, everything doesn't have to be so perfect. Maybe I can use this a little earlier. I can look a little foolish. I can do some experiments. So yes, you can definitely change.
This is Jason. I will never use a toaster oven. I am a laggard forever with toaster ovens.
Yep.
Gia here, I know when it comes to cooking and all of these devices, I'm the last person. I'm a laggard. I'm very proud laggard.
See, I'm the first person. I had the first microwave oven. I had the first sous vide oven. And I'm as known for my kitchen gadgets. I will try it so I'm an innovator there. I'm not even an early adopter. If it's a new kitchen gadget, I got to have it.
It's Indra Bartona here. I wanted to add on to some of the points, the wonderful points that Gia and George just mentioned. And I think I found myself as not always being the early adopter, but for example, I'll reflect back to the first feature film that I produced. And although with the digital cameras, that was a choice, but with another phase, which was editing. So a fellow producer, which I guess I was still an early adopter now, I was thinking of it, we were talking about the prospect of starting to do more of the editing work since we were actually shooting the film in digital on the set to progress it at a faster rate than taking it, offline and doing it at a separate time. So we actually did start with both our projects, both our feature films, with editors starting to cut and shape the feature film, which was pretty exciting as well to build on that. So I almost think that I was just kind of like piggybacking off that idea from other producing people that were in the field that were looking at new and innovative things, but still open to that. And of course, we, being in the creative field, really lucky that our team were able to just draw on that. So thanks so much, both Gia and George, for giving me that precious reminder.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also found George's and Gia's comments very heartfelt. I guess it just really resonated really well with me, because I think that in general,
Samantha Postman, by the way, Samantha.
Yeah, sorry. Just like a typical
it's okay,
polymath,
I'll do it. Just keep it going.
Yeah, I was running 2 meetings at the same time today, so jumping between the two of them. So I forgot to say my name. Yes, what I want to say is about the early adopters. It's pretty common to be in more than one. So like even though many of us are entrepreneurs, we're in tech and AI and a lot of online type innovations. When you do it online, you're more likely to do it at home, which actually nowadays there's such a blend. So for an example of that would be when Facebook first came out, and I know that really dates me, but when it first came out, I remember standing with a bunch of moms and they're like, what's this Facebook? I'm not going to do that. Why would I want to put my picture and all my life on there? And I was like, I have a Facebook account. And they're like, seriously, you're going to do that? And I was like, and my kids were really young at the time. And I'm like, you know what? I want to make sure, like, I know that this is the future and I want to make sure that I master that. And I know everything there is about it before I let my kids on it, because I understood, especially with boys, what video gaming does and how much time they'll spend into it. And so I literally was on Facebook, I don't know, 3 or 4 years before my kids started to get on. And yep, sure enough, everybody's on Facebook. But when my children came on, I turned off all the game apps. I turned off all of the share between different apps and everything, because I knew exactly how the platform worked. And when my friends were all complaining that their children were having major issues on Facebook and they're wondering why I didn't, well, I'm like, well, that's because I was on it for 3 or 4 years before they even got on it. So that's an important thing for all of us to understand, that when you see the future and you have a vested interest, let's say your children, it is on you to make sure you understand it, because they're children and they're trying to understand, or they're going to come in as regular users in a new tech and nobody even knows what's going on. Like if you don't have your, even in the house, if I don't have my router turned on, or I have mine turned off in the middle of the night when they were young so that they couldn't go on, and, people couldn't text them in the middle of the night when they just had Wi-Fi, with iPods before they had iPhones. And so those are all ways that you want to be innovative. So maybe you need to choose when you're innovative and when you're not, or when you're an early adopter and when you're not. But it is a bit of a personality trait. I do want to say, though, that I do think it can switch if you have made it big. So let's just say you got into stock market and you're new to it, but you make it big. It's the first time you've ever done anything that crazy. You go and put $1,000 in something, which is totally not you, and a new project that's just coming out and people have been saying some cool things about it. And then all of a sudden you make a crazy amount of money. You are going to become an early adopter all the time after that. So I think you can switch. But also the other way will go, if you get burned really badly, you might actually pull back and be one of those people who won't be an early adopter anymore, or take a long time before you step in.
I think that's brilliant, because all you're talking about this, George, the upside too. We've been talking about the tax on it and the downsides of early adopter, but man, it's like surfing. If you're too far ahead of the wave, you just sit there, nothing happens, and the wave comes over and drowns you. If you're right on the crest, you can surf. But if you miss the wave a little bit, now you're in the calm water. Now, there's something very nice about calm water, but it ain't surfing. And so you don't get the thrill, you don't get the rewards, et cetera, et cetera. So you want to be right in the sweet spot. And that has a tremendous rewards, and it's really thrilling. And of course, some pitfalls and downsides.
But there are times when your early adoption has lower risk, like, for example, when I was using about Facebook. But I did not know what was the future. So we have a back channel going, and so we're talking to each other, and many of us are talking about Farmville. And Jason, who's a science teacher, was saying that many kids were failing his classes because of Farmville and Dragonville, which were all part of Facebook. Well, I didn't know that was going to be the future, but I did know that Facebook was going to be the future. And I saw how the adults were adopting on and playing all these word games and going like crazy on them and just spending all day, all night on it. So I could see the future, but also you have to remember the early adopters do see patterns quite quickly. And so we're able to say, okay, this is where this is going. And so that's also a personality trait, is just pattern recognition and being able to see into the future.
Mm-hmm. Gia here. So what I'm hearing is that in order to understand where you can jump and where to stop and pause, is that you have to understand who you are first. So it starts from within, because this is a personality trait. So if for example, there's a new technology coming, there's a new innovation coming, I need to decide immediately if I'm going to be an innovator or an early adopter. But the first compass that's going to guide me is who I am from within, is that I know I'm a risk taker, and I'm not afraid. I'm ready to jump, and I'm ready to be the lab rat in everything that comes out. But at the same time, I recognize this and I kind of give it a pause. Like, are we really jumping on this because this is the smart decision? Or am I jumping on this because I just feel like it and I'm just making decisions, impulsive decisions? So this is a really good time where everyone can just sit down and just really understand, where do I lie in this, and where can I take a pause and use that as a backseat sometimes as an early majority or an early adopter, or vice versa.
Yeah,
something like that.
this is Dr. Jasmine Berry here, and I love that the conversation has taken this angle. And we're discussing now the various categories and when they apply to us specifically. So to George's point, I think personally for myself, I definitely can find myself in most of those categories, but mostly probably on the innovation side, just because I do love being an engineer and being a scientist and just, constantly iterating and innovating from that perspective. And maybe depending on what I am adopting or what the product is, then it will vary between whether I'm an early adopter or a laggard, for example. So I think that's totally dependent on what the service is. But one thing I wanted to mention, since we are discussing risk and rewards and something that's not often brought up, especially when we're discussing services and products and devices in the health side, is that, oftentimes so far we've been discussing what it is like to be an early adopter because, we freely have that choice. Maybe the risk is, really low. Like George just mentioned, he adopts cooking materials just for the sake of adopting them. But there's a community of people, especially with those who have disabilities and who are looking to some of these technologies to really enhance their lifestyle and to get on an equal playing field with everyone else who does not have debilitating health conditions. People with disabilities, oftentimes, especially in the AI community, they have been one of the earliest adopters of AI technologies, especially when it comes down to interactive tools that they use every day, because they understand that they really need this in order to function and to really maybe function at a level that everyone else can. People who have debilitating conditions that maybe deal with paralysis, they're often the first adopters of new technologies, especially as it relates to maybe getting a BCI implant, which is a brain-computer interface, to help them get some mobility back in their legs. And, oftentimes they're the early testers and the early adoption agents for this technology. And essentially, you can maybe call them, I think what Gia mentioned earlier, that sometimes we volunteer ourselves to be lab rats, so to speak. But I give credit to that community oftentimes because they are often taking the highest risk because they have such a desire to improve their condition. And that early adopter category doesn't get highlighted enough, in my opinion. And oftentimes after they go through all the testing and the trials, this technology often gets deployed and advertised to the general public for them to use. And, I think the disability community, especially, it's one thing to mention this and to make sure that they get credit, for their role in the advancements that they play in science and in technology. And it's one early adopter community, in my opinion, that does not just get highlighted enough.
This is Michael. It's not lost on me that right now, as we're discussing early adoption, we are early adopters on these platforms we're discussing this on. And, I'm on Clubhouse right now, and I'm in the beta program for its Houses program. And so not only am I an early adopter of social audio on Clubhouse, but I'm also an innovator inside Clubhouse of the Houses beta and trying to get that worked out and rolled out and squash the bugs and work with the company to make sure everything is right before they roll it out to the general public. But still, even the general public on Clubhouse are all early innovators or early adopters. So this is all very meta for me. I just want to leave it there. Thanks.
Hey, go ahead.
Hey, this is Jason. Michael, what's going to be your house words over on Clubhouse? Like winter is coming. We don't sow. Our house words up in Canada here. Winter is coming always.
That must be a reference to like Game of Thrones or something. And I didn't ever watch that, so I guess you'll have to fill me in on that. But I guess
you're not an early adopter of that.
We have a laggard.
I am not.
We have a laggard.
No.
Laggard.
What's after laggard where you just never do it at all? Like, because that's where I am with Game of Thrones. Like, I have no interest.
Non-adopter.
Actually, when it comes to Game of Thrones, Gia here, I was one of the very few people who watched it first, and I was talking about it to everyone. Everyone was just looking at me like I'm crazy. And then 3 years later, the show blows up, and everyone is like, "Oh, Gia, you should watch Game of Thrones." And I'm just like, really? Like, come on, people.
This is Jason. Just real quick, my sons and I went to a Comic-Con, and it was during the filming of season 1, and Peter Dinklage and Lena Headey were there, and nobody was talking to them because nobody knew who they were. And I was like, oh my God, you guys are going to be on Game of Thrones. So we got to talk to both of them for like 20 minutes and got their autographs and pictures, which was really cool. So advantages to being an early adopter. Okay, thanks. This is Jason.
I just want to step in and thank so many people that have joined us. I'm so thrilled. We have a very early adopter here in the audience. We have Sapphire, the poet, who wrote the book Precious, which became the movie Push. So Sapphire, I want to say hello to you. And I see some other great people in this room. Jason's wife. We have Clint. We have Shadows. You know, it's Dr. J. So I really I know that this is discussion among us, but you please feel free to add questions in the comments in the chat we have. You know, thank you everyone for joining us.
Fantastic. I love it. And join us for the after party, which the link is in the moment, and it's also in the nest and in the chat. Join us for the after party where we want to have a dynamic discussion. So we're going to shift now as we round out with we're going to close out at the end, at the bottom of the hour, but we have one more question of our group of conversationalists. And this ties back to words of wisdom, because this version of Jennifer right now can look back at the version of Jennifer back in 2005, who was like, this is cool, but is anybody else going to think it's cool? This is exciting. Is anybody going to else think this is exciting? Because I can tell you back then, no one did. So if I could go back to myself, or if I could speak to you, listener, about this and give you some words of wisdom, I would say what you have in your gut, that thing that makes your heart go pitter patter, this thing that lights your brain on fire, this mission is definitely something that you need to share with the world. It's a message that you need to get out there, even if in those early days, no one knows what you're talking about. My words of wisdom to you is to find others who are also speaking Klingon. Find others who are speaking your language. It may be difficult. You may feel like there's no one locally. And I can tell you, in the podcasting space, I did not find anybody in my city who was podcasting. I found an online community. Eventually, I did want to find a local community, and I just started Googling like crazy. Podcasters in San Antonio, podcasters in Texas. And I found, oh my gosh, just a tiny handful. But it was like an amazing, like, oh my goodness, I'm not the only one moment. And I reached out to them, got connected with them. And I can tell you, folks, the rest is history. But if you are an early adopter and you're in that very difficult uphill slog where the people around you are naysayers and no one understands why you're on fire in this, but you can't get it out of your head, your gut knows it's the right direction, and it's just something that you are excited about, and you just know this is a thing, increase your knowledge, increase your community, increase your network, and know that it's going to be a bit of a grind. But there is a thrill and an energy and a vibe when it comes to being an early adopter and embracing it. And then what happens is that you will eventually be the guide. I am at this stage in my career, in my path, in my journey of being a guide to others. And it is a real joy to see those light bulb moments go off in their minds, to see them move forward for their vision so that they can share their mission and their message with the world. And with that, I will turn it over to George.
I've just got to say, Jennifer, that was incredible. And I am going to post, I'm talking now, so I can't post, but I'm doing an Otter transcript of this. And that little speech of yours, Jennifer, was magnificent. Oh my God, it was just so thrilling. You got to find other people like yourself. Real quick story. I met a guy a month ago. We were at a party, somebody came running over and said, George, found somebody who does his own coffee roasting and blending and sous vide cooking together, both of them together. I never met such a person. We came running after each other. This guy, Michael, and I became instant close friends. It was just amazingly thrilling to find somebody who was an early adopter, maybe an innovator even, in those two things together. We had a dozen other things we shared because our minds worked the same way. So yes, Jennifer, that was phenomenal. Yes, the thrills of being an early adopter in most things that you care, anything you care about, is so much outweighs all the downsides and the crap you have to take.
Yeah, just adding a little bit more to that.
Samantha.
Hi, Samantha here. When you are an innovator, or sometimes you're an early adopter and an innovator at the same time, you are going to have people who just don't see your vision. That happened to me in 2019. I was working on a platform it's basically a volunteer platform for nonprofit organizations. It's two-sided, somewhat like Fiverr for volunteers with nonprofits. And I was going to nonprofit organizations saying that the future is remote work, remote volunteerism, that the young adults want to be able to contribute their skills a lot of them are tech and can be done remotely, not on site. Well, nonprofit organizations just could not wrap their mind around this. Like they were just like, no, people come and they set up chairs and they sit at desks and they come and help, do flyers and hand these out and talk to people. And I was like, the future is moving. It's going to be a blend of those, but you're going to need this tech. And so I honestly had a really hard time. I was laughed out of a lot of places and they're just like, this isn't happening. But you know what? I kept on working on it guess what happened? March 2020, we all know that COVID happened and everything went online, all volunteerism. I didn't have my platform done at the time because I couldn't get backers, but it was extremely difficult I did have one backer, a $500,000 investor, but then he got slapped with a lawsuit right before we were about to sign the contract. And so that didn't happen. But it doesn't change the fact that an early adopter or an innovator is an innovator. It doesn't change the fact that that I was wrong. I was actually turned out to be right. But what happens is when you keep on going, you start to find your people. So I didn't have my people then. I wasn't surrounded by people who could see the future at the time. And I was kind of laughed out. It was hard. But now look at here. 13 of us are on here today. We're all early adopters. We talk in back channels. We're constant like, hey, have you guys heard about this? Hey, do you know this is where this is going? I think this is going to be huge. LinkedIn's starting over on audio events. This is going to be big over on LinkedIn. Look at their audience. And so now I just kept on going because that's who I am. And I found a community like all of you will do of people who are like-minded and will have those exciting conversations and back you. And hey, I want on board. Can I help you out? And you help each other and it's reciprocated. So keep on going. That's my note to my younger self. Just know that eventually it's going to work out because the opposite, like to not have done anything would have been very boring and I would have been disappointed. It's just not my personality to sit there and just be that like laggard, I guess, or non-adopter. But you will find I'm going to use tribe. You will find your tribe. You're going to find your people if you continue to go and keep seeking people who are like-minded like you.
Hello, this is Indra Bartona. So I wanted to reflect on my younger self. And if I could give and share some words of wisdom is to many of us that are on this journey and I hear there's many innovators in this room, many early adopters. But one thing is for sure, I question myself a lot moving into that space. And I looked around and I couldn't see many people doing what I was doing. So I think one really important thing is to believe in yourself. And I know this is a Positivity Vibe Tribe topic that we talk about, but I think it's really valuable because you just have to believe in yourself, believe in your intuition, in the fact that you have already taken the leap. So don't question yourself or doubt yourself and just move forward with speed, with self-belief in what you are doing. And in doing that, when I do look at the early example of the feature film where a lot of things weren't done the same, we did the digital shooting. We also started the editing on site of the feature, some very, early nice rough cuts of the feature film. And now in reflection, I think that, there was a lot of doubt. And I think nowadays, if I was to pick up something new, I would just, if I had that feeling of we should try this, we should do this, just to 100% believe in it, take a deep breath and move forward with the energy and propelling it forward. So it all did move forward, but I think it could be easier. And sometimes it's about ourselves, and it's all natural as human beings to have that moment of self-doubt, to question ourselves, to put ourselves, in that position. And I think we almost need to flip that switch and say, this is an amazing idea, to, again, I was so blessed to be surrounded by incredible minds and creative people that were ready for the adventure. So another key is to be able to identify the people around you that have that sense of adventure, that are willing to go on the journey with you and to embrace that 100% with all of your energy. And I think that is why life is such a big adventure. Thank you.
Wow, that's awesome, Indra. And to every one of the other speakers, I think they all covered some amazing gems so far. So I'll keep it very brief. Maybe a few points that I think would be worth.
That's Jasmine.
Dr. Jasmine.
Dr. Jasmine Berry, thank you for reminding me. A few points I wanted to share as far as I look back on my time, especially getting into startups and starting new projects and getting research grants when you're in that innovative stage to hopefully get something for people to adopt very early on. As a user, as someone who's taking on some of these services and products, I think what's really going to be important is if you look to see what's important to you, what's vital to you as an individual, what brings you joy, what brings you happiness, or what can you feel like you can utilize in your day-to-day life, and and maybe worry a little less about external validation from others, at least on the forefront. You really want to focus on what serves you in your purpose and where you're trying to go and what you're trying to do. And then on the outside of that, continue to do what Samantha said. Eventually, you'll find your community. You'll find people who have similar interests. You'll also, start bumping into or having random encounters with other people who have the same goals as you are as well. So the early adoption opportunity, it's going to come with various levels of uncertainty, and that's absolutely normal. And in fact, you should encounter that. If you're absolutely certain about a product or technology, you're probably a laggard. And probably maybe another category aside from that. But early adoption opportunity, it's consider it like the Wild Wild West. If you want to do something impactful, if you want to make change or be one of the leaders who are using something that's new and novel, it's going to come with a ton of uncertainty. That is completely normal. Embrace it and just consider it as part of the journey. Make this a fun ride. Some of the most fun experiences that I've had a lot of spontaneity to it. And I wasn't sure about what was ahead of me. I just put one foot in front of the other and kept going, kept using the product, kept using the service or device. And that exploratory nature that you have is something that you have the opportunity to do when you're an early adopter. And it's really fun. Trust me, it comes with a lot of risk, but the reward is a payoff that you are definitely going to enjoy in the long run. So that's my tidbit to leave with you all.
Hey, this is Jason from Bunsen and Beaker. Dr. Berry, I just want to comment also on the emotional portion of being an early adopter. If you're having an emotional response to something and it feels right, chances are good other people are also having that emotional response. And like, if you ever felt like Michael was talking about tech, he adopted early. If you held the very first iPhone, you just knew the world was going to change when you held that first iPhone for the first time. That was an emotional response. The other thing in my area of expertise is how we treat and train dogs early. And I was around when we trained dogs through punishment, through shock collars and spike collars and things like that. And now the research is overwhelmingly gone the other way, that positive reinforcement, training dogs with respect, is the best way to train them, because the evidence shows that they retain whatever you're trying to teach them faster. You build a bond with them. You don't break that bond. And it was just because we just knew more. Innovation and early adoption can only occur as we know more about the world. And we just started to know more that dogs literally have feelings, that if you hit a dog or if you shock collar a dog, there's going to be the same negative consequences and emotions that if you put a shock collar on a toddler. Can you imagine doing that? So that's one of the things we talk about with dog trainers is now there's this big change in how we train dogs. But those trainers initially had huge pushback from other trainers that thought that their method of rewarding dogs with treats and talking to them in a respectful manner, they thought they were bananas. They thought that you would never get to train a dog as quickly as with punishment. And turns out that those early adopters with dog training were absolutely right. And it comes back to the emotional response. If you train a dog and you train them with positive reinforcement and you look in their eyes, you just feel that warm gooiness. There's no scientific kind of like explanation for that or definition. Boosts of endorphins, but that's the best way. And if you can feel that, other people are too, and maybe you're onto something. This is Jason. Thank you.
Jason, just very quickly, I think you should come up with a scientific term for that. We would all adhere to it, especially the scientific.
I think it's the awe factor.
You could just name it after yourself, Jason. We'll all get behind it.
100%.
Yeah, definitely.
I love that. Jason, amazing. This is Mariah speaking, and I just had some time to really reflect and listen to us all share some exquisite points. And my wisdom to leave to anyone that is actually embarking on this early adoption phase or journey is to just be intentional. Just really take the time to learn about what it is that you are choosing to learn about so that it has the lasting and positive and effective impact that you're intending for. So that actually means that you have to put on all of the hats at once, and you're not assuming one role as an early adopter, as an innovator, as a laggard, as anything. You're not putting yourself in any box. It's you just setting the intention to, like I say, being an ethical engineer or builder, or really just generative piece of our collective so that you aren't harming what is being developed or the people that are needing access to these resources and toolings and whatnot. So I would just encourage everyone listening, anyone involved in technology and innovation and any new advancements that are coming about, to just be incredibly intentional about what you are choosing to adopt. And that would absolutely require you to do the research, for you to get a better understanding, for you to be able to see a vision forward, so that you aren't blindly adopting or advocating or promoting technology that will and absolutely has the potential to hurt. That's what I would say.
Well, so great, Mariah, because there is that flip side, right? Is the technology, if you adopt it, is it going to benefit everybody or can it harm people? So the point of being thoughtful ahead of time is really wise. So thank you. It made me think about my own, journey as a reporter. When I started, I was at the AP covering, breaking news, writing for radio. And then later I took time off because I always continued to write, but I wasn't in the newsroom. And then things, absolutely changed. And, but I said, hey, what is it? Twitter. I got to get on Twitter. I was never really interested in blogs. It didn't, it didn't excite me. But I got on Twitter in 2013 and had this family. One of my boys said, when I got to 100 followers, he said, Mom, I said, what's this poops and farts following me? Okay, so he had figured out how to get on Twitter. Anyway, but what it did do for me was I was at a big PEN America rally in front of the New York Public Library in 2016 after Trump was elected. And the poet Rita Dove spoke. And I said, wow, this is great. So I was taking video and then a choir sang and I put it together in a tweet. And because now a phone can do everything for us, right? I could Google what the choir, what the name of the song was. I could, know people's handles that I didn't know before, and there it was. And and people came to me and said, "Oh, was that you?" So it kind of went mini viral, but it showed me the power of adopting that new technology. And later, a few years later, I became an assistant managing editor at a newspaper, and in the world now of local newspapers, digital is first. So that a reporter, if they're seeing a fire as they're coming to work, they got to stop, take footage, put it out on a tweet, and that's what goes out there before, except at the New York Times, maybe at the Washington Post, goes out there before any editor has seen that. So there's really a lot of power, and you have to pivot as your career changes and decide what, how, when, and how you're going to be an early adopter.
Absolutely. I feel passion for the thing or the area or the field in which you're going to be an early adopter in is necessary, because when I think about it, if you're not interested or if you don't have passion for it, first of all, you just will not do the kind of exploration above and beyond or have the awareness that would be required to even be aware of something new in that direction or in that field. And it, and it is that that exploration is something that is not going to necessarily be productive on paper, or you're not going to get paid for it. Researching, let's say what's the latest in social audio or whatnot. So that passion is going to actually, I would say it's a prerequisite. And then once you are the early adopter, then it can be lonely, right? So you can even be ridiculed in some cases for being an early adopter, and without that passion, you may not persist, or you may not survive that period. Dr. Berry mentioned that there is uncertainty, and absolutely, of course, with in my case, in technology, there's of course uncertainty. I would say though that things don't typically change overnight. So if you have that passion, for example, I'll just give the example of social audio. If you have that passion, as in if you care about this technology and you're always reading about what's going on with the different companies that own these social audio products, then you're going to be aware enough to say, for example, if your primary social audio platform is one that is dying out or, is going to be discontinued soon, if you have that passion and you do the research, you're going to be more likely to be able to catch that and pivot. So I would say actually, success as an early adopter is in many ways dependent on, whether and how passionate you are in the direction that you're being an early adopter of.
Well said.
This is Michael, and I'm going to get back to that aha moment, because I've been thinking about this entire conversation. Like, when have I had an aha moment? And I guess this conversation this week, where we've been discussing this topic, has been my aha moment that, like, oh, I'm an early adopter. Like, I never really thought of myself as that. It was just, there's stuff out there that I'm interested in, and I'm excited to try it out, and sometimes it pays off and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's pretty expensive, but it overall has been a very rewarding thing. And so, like in the back chat, one of the questions has been, what would you tell the younger version of yourself? Knowing what you know now is just, I guess I settled into the idea of not buying generation one of any product, letting the innovators sort of play around with that first generation and work out the kinks, and then buy the second generation. So that's kind of where I've slipped into things, is being an early adopter, buying that second gen and going from there and see what happens. So I appreciate everybody in this conversation. It's been a lot of fun, giving me a lot to think about. And this has been my aha moment. I guess I'm an early adopter. So thanks a lot, conversationalists.
Well, one of the things is that with the conversationalists is we get an opportunity to not only share a little bit about what drives us, but also to learn from one another and to learn from our audience. They're talking down in the chat. They're replying to us. Of course, we hope that they'll join us for the after party. But I want you all to know that this isn't a one-time thing. You've heard us reference that we've had 2 previous shows that are recorded, ready for you to listen to, but we've also have future shows coming up. And so I wanted to bring up Indra Bartona, who is the host and producer for next week's show. Indra, why don't you share with our audience what the topic of next week's show is going to be all about?
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Hello, everyone. I am Indra Bartona, and I'm personally excited to be hosting next week's show, and the topic being, how do movies impact our lives? Okay, so movies enhance our lives and can often take us on a virtual adventure. Our senses are engaged in the magic of Hollywood as most of us surrender to the experience when we're actually watching a movie. So I invite all of you to join us next week as we share our personal experiences, being the group of us here, the conversationalists, on the impact of movies and how they have impacted our lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Indra. This sounds like a really, really exciting topic. Just hearing about next week's topic, I already know what I want to say, and I'm already thinking about all the impact the movies that had on me. And this is going to be really exciting. I hope everyone here put your calendars, get your reminders for next week's episode with Indra and the conversationalists. One of the things that we discussed today is one of the things that I've noticed today from all of our conversations that determines the difference between all of them is a common denominator, which is fear and skepticism. They are the deciders of if we should jump into a new innovation, technology, or a new concept. But how do we control that? Can I today, as a late majority, jump into trying and being an early adopter? Can I even be an innovator? Fear and skepticism is the only thing that will stop you from trying new things. So hearing our stories today and hearing and thinking about your own story, which we will share in our After Space coming up right after this session. Think about all of the things that you were afraid to try. Why? Ask yourself why. What was the worst thing that can happen of just me trying a new thing? A lot of the times we tie our fear to our reputation, to our legacy, to monetary values. What would happen if today I spent X amount of money to become an early adopter in a thing, in something, in a technology or a new concept, that I will become a leader in this, that I will help a lot of people just like me who were afraid like me. And I'm no longer afraid. And how can I reach that to other people? How can I teach that to other people? So this is one of the things that I hope you take away from this. Please share your thoughts with us today on the Spaces chat right there below in the purple button there. And let us know, how did you feel? If you were an innovator, if you were an early adopter, an early majority, or even a laggard, how do you feel? And how has this space impacted you? What are your takeaways? So believe in yourself wherever you are. Just believe in yourself, believe in your passion. And just like all of our amazing speakers here mentioned, believe in yourself and trust your passion and trust your guts. If this is something that you stand behind and you believe in it, keep pushing forward despite all the barriers that gets through you. This is Gia, and thank you so much for listening to us today. And I pass it to Jennifer for wrapping up the space.
Fantastic. Thank you all for joining us for The Conversationalist, created by Jason Zakowski. This was episode 3, the early adopter opportunity. I hope that you walk away from this both encouraged, informed, inspired. Go forth in your early adopter journey. Don't listen to the naysayers. Dig deep. Go up that hill. You can do it. I'd like to thank my talented co-host, Gia El-Hassan, Rose Horowitz, as well as Rev McInnes, who was the director for today's show. And of course, our LinkedIn Audio, Wisdom, and Clubhouse hosts and speakers who joined us on stage for today's show. If you're not already following them, click on their profile and follow them, because you're going to get gold nuggets like these and many others throughout the week on Twitter, Spaces, Wisdom, or LinkedIn. Now, as Gia mentioned, we have an open Q&A after party. The link is in the nest and in the chat. Or if you'd like to just go to Gia's profile, guess what? She's the one who is hosting the after party. So we invite you to join us. And we also invite you to join us next week for Indra's show of The Conversationalist. That's episode 4, How Do Movies Impact Our Lives? We're going to close out. We wish you well. We look forward to having you join us for the next Conversationalist.